Gotham episode 3, The Balloonman. Definitely a good episode. I enjoyed both the side story with Cobblepot, where we got to see little bits and pieces of him, culminating in him actually going back to Jim by the end of this episode. And also, the main story was actually pretty interesting. The villain himself, like the actual Balloonman, wasn't too interesting himself, but like the actual concept behind him, I enjoyed that a lot. It was like just people who were really big figures within the city, corrupt cops, corrupt judges, a lot of apparently everybody who has any sort of money. They were all bad people and they were being targeted, and this was kind of the first vigilante that Gotham had seen, or at least in a long time as far as the series goes. And it was just really cool. People, the city itself rallied behind this person because these people did bad things. It was a rich person in the beginning who had a lot of power. He was corrupt. He wasn't going to go to prison. There was a priest, and then of course the corrupt cop who was just flat out beating people up. So it was really interesting. The actual concept behind him. He was a vigilante, and he of course allowed for them to put in a little scene at the end where Bruce is watching the TV, and it's like him being able to see that is just one of the small little things where it's like this is one of those little steps, him experiencing a vigilante within the city after his parents were killed. So it was definitely interesting how they were able to kind of parallel it to Bruce's story, and of course getting to see Bruce was pretty cool. Him and Alfred having a little sword fight in the beginning, I thought that was actually pretty cool. But I did enjoy this episode. It was definitely good. I enjoyed a lot of the stuff that we got to see with Bullock in this episode. He was pretty funny, especially towards the end when the guy had the gun on him. And he was just like, I sacrificed my life too. I did stuff too. So I thought it was pretty funny and saying, like, I thought you were just doing kind of a favor for the city. So, you don't have to shoot me. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good episode. We got to see a little bit of stuff with Falcone and Mooney. And she had her boyfriend killed off, which I thought was crazy. But, you know, she doesn't really care. So she has him killed off. She has Falcone's girlfriend mugged. And Falcone is in a state where I think this episode was kind of the first time we kind of see where he's transitioning from thinking like, okay, she's responsible for everything, and she, of course, being Fish Mooney, to thinking maybe Maroni is starting to, take things on because things are going crazy within the city since Bruce, or not, I can't think of Bruce's father's name, but the Waynes, after they died. So it was pretty cool to have that moment with him and Mooney. And it seemed like he was, of course, right on Mooney when she's like, oh, she was mugged. Like, I hope the person who did that pays. And then he, like, and anyone who helped him, and he kind of had that look, and it kind of gave Mooney a signal, too, and she kind of just said nothing. So it was that moment where he knew it was her, but at the same time, it's like things are getting really crazy. People getting mugged like crazy in the city and stuff like that. So we need to be a bit more cautious, especially me, because I'm the big boss in town right now. So that was really cool. We got to see some more people in the background. It was like 3 women. I don't know who they would possibly be. Of course, the blonde woman, of course, made me think of Harley, but that didn't really make sense because she is actually a psychiatrist. And I would have to assume that she is a psychiatrist during this time, even if she's not working. But that could have technically been her. She was blonde. Gave her the pigtails and stuff. And they did a lot of talk about Arkham, and with Arkham not really being open at this moment in the series, she could be doing all sorts of random things to try to make money. So that was one of the things I thought was pretty cool, because they were, of course, how they shot it. Mooney and Falcone were to the right of the scene, but you could clearly see in the background the three women sort of preparing for their set. So I thought that was kind of cool. And like I said, the Arkham stuff, that seems to be the really big thing. It was pretty big in the beginning. They dropped a couple of hints here and there in the first 2 episodes, but in this one they mentioned it a lot, especially with Maroni when he ran into Cobblepot. He was talking about how that's kind of his big play. Like, it's not just killing Falcone or doing anything else. It's just taking control of Arkham, or when it opens up, doing something very specific to show that Falcone doesn't have nearly as much power as people think he does. So it'll be really cool when Arkham opens up, because that'll kind of open up the floodgates, not just for kind of all the typical sort of Batman stuff where it's like, oh, who's this and who's that villain, but it's going to open up what the show kind of wants it to open up, which is us focusing on these characters and us getting a cool story that a lot of people may not know. Like, I know the character Falcone, but I hardly know anything about him because he's a mob boss, so you can imagine how many times they really bother to put him in, like, the Batman cartoons or even the Batman movies. So it's kind of cool to have that story with him, and they're gonna have that big gang war. Who knows what's really gonna happen with Cobblepot still alive? How that's gonna affect the whole stuff with Arkham. But I really enjoyed it. Cobblepot just getting deeper and deeper, and of course him getting into that restaurant, and of course being able to work around Maroni, so he might end up working under him for a little bit, and then possibly killing that guy off or killing someone else off. Who knows? But I enjoyed his side of the story, and of course him going up to Jim in the end, and so Jim's gonna be really freaking out in next week's episode. But overall, I thought it was a great episode. I really did love the premise of it with people being just well-known citizens. They were just corrupt, so that's where this villain came from, and Jim kind of had to feel that sort of torture by the end of this episode, so that was really cool. Also, we did get a scene with his wife, which I thought was pretty interesting, when the woman came back and they really thought that he was the one. They thought he killed Cobblepot, so she of course goes to Barbara and stuff. That scene I definitely enjoyed, and we find out more about Barbara's past and their relationship together. It wasn't just that they were just together and they broke up. They were together and they did some illegal stuff. They were doing drugs, and Barbara apparently still does do drugs for whatever reason. She just needed to. So I really did enjoy that scene because it gave a lot more context, and it made it way more interesting because it was like, oh, they're together and she still cares about it. That's a typical thing. You could still care about someone you used to be with, even if you aren't with them. But with them having been in this really unique relationship where they were kind of drug addicts, or possibly drug addicts, they at least used drugs, it made it much more interesting. So I do want to get a lot more backstory on that. I'd also like to know what Barbara does in general. One thing we also found out is that she's lived there for a long time because the woman had a key. So Jim moved into her place, and so maybe when he moved to Gotham, he moved in with her. But I'd love to know what she actually does, because every time we see her, and I thought about this in this episode, she's like just at home. Like, she's never wearing pants. She's in like a button-down shirt when they're talking, or she's coming out of the shower. Like in the end of this episode, she was wearing something like she was just about to go out. So either she works at night or she was just going out. I don't know, but I'd love to get a bit more backstory on her. But this is definitely a great episode. I can't wait to see how much Jim freaks out in next week's episode. But I'm really excited to see Jim and Cobblepot sort of work together, and how that is actually going to lead to Cobblepot being the being the Penguin, really. So it was a great episode. I'm excited for next week. Of course, comment below, let me know what you guys thought about it, your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And with all the hints they were dropping with Arkham and Cobblepot kind of getting in with Maroni now that he's working at that restaurant, how do you guys think the sort of mob dynamics are going to change within the series, especially now that he's gone to Jim? So how do you guys think the mob mechanics are really going to change throughout the series from this point on? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.